Slap! The crack echoed through the first-class cabin, followed by a wave of murmurs. All eyes snapped to me. John Walker, just as I stepped into SunVista Airlines Flight SV-115. No warning, no greeting, just a sharp slap from first-class lead attendant Bianca Nguyen. "Sir, you're not on the manifest. Move to economy." I stood frozen, boarding pass in hand. "Walker, John A. Seat 1A. My pulse pounded as though the entire cabin held its breath. A smooth gray leather seat and crisp white LED lights framed the moment, until everything shattered. "Tell us where you're watching from. Would you stay silent or fight back?" Bianca crossed her arms, her tablet screen blinking "Manifest error, passenger not found." Flash cut. The elderly woman beside me frowned. A businessman to my left clenched the armrest, and a child behind me shrank under a thin blanket. "Check again," I said, voice calm but firm. Memories flooded back. At 22, I'd worn jeans and a t-shirt to a military VIP lounge in Singapore and was sent away because I didn't look the part. Today felt like déjà vu, but I refused to be humiliated twice. I slipped on my earpiece and whispered to my assistant, Matteo, "Start recording. Everything's on." Passengers leaned forward, sensing something bigger than a seating dispute. Bianca drew a breath and moved to call security. I placed a hand over my chest. No anger, just steady resolve. "Before you involve anyone," I murmured under my breath, "you should know exactly who I am." She hesitated, tablet trembling in her hand. The cabin fell silent, the tension electric. I caught the reflection of Harper Lee's camera lens as she filmed every second. Her eyes asked, "What will you do next?" Only 10 seconds remained, and the answer was already coming. I felt the sting of that slap long after my cheek warmed. I slid into the seat beside 1A, facing the window and the blur of tarmac below. My heart slammed in my chest, not from fear, but from the old ache of humiliation. At 22, in a crisp army uniform, I had swaggered into a VIP lounge in Singapore after a commendation ceremony. The attendant glanced at my jeans and t-shirt and waved me off. I understood duty, but I'd never thought image could outweigh honor, until now. Bianca's accusation still echoed. "You're not on the manifest." She hadn't seen my military record or the wrinkles in my uniform jacket. All she saw was a civilian in a worn-out sport coat. My hands tightened on the armrests. I'd spent a career proving I belonged, commanding brigades overseas. Now, at 65, that same doubt flickered in someone's eyes. I took a steadying breath. The cabin's hush pressed in. Overhead bins clicked. Engines hummed to life. I focused on each detail. The soft gray seat, the scent of polished leather, the hush of passengers holding their breath. Shame and anger warred inside me. Shame because I'd let a stranger make me feel small. Anger because I couldn't let it stand. I owed myself this refusal to bow out. Across the aisle, Harper Lee's phone camera glinted. Her steady gaze reminded me I wasn't alone. A handful of passengers stood, silent witnesses. That's when I decided. I wouldn't argue words or toss accusations. I would reveal a truth they couldn't ignore. I leaned back, chest straight. 22 years earlier, I'd endured quiet slights. Today, I'd return the favor, without raising my voice. Instead, I'd let a single phone call change everything. A soft ding came from the cockpit. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a manifest glitch, so please bear with us as we verify passenger lists." The flight attendants exchanged uneasy glances. I straightened in my seat, still bristling from that slap, watching the screen on Bianca's tablet spin through loading bars. SunVista's Airbus A350 cabin felt suddenly smaller. Plush gray seats lined either side. White LED lights gleaming, but tension saturated the air. I glanced at Ethan Ward, seated a row ahead in 1C, his tailored suit almost too crisp for this moment. He leaned back, coffee in hand, and smirked, Someone wearing a rumpled sport coat and jeans probably doesn't belong up here anyway. His tone dripped condescension. A murmur rippled through the cabin as passengers shifted uneasily. A middle-aged woman in a floral dress shot Ethan a warning look. A man 2 rows back crossed his arms, eyebrows knitting together. But Ethan sat cool and collected, clearly enjoying the discomfort he'd stoked. Bianca tapped her tablet, frustration creasing her brow. Lucas Reed hovered nearby, whispering, "Ma'am, the system keeps rejecting his name. The manifest update from dispatch hasn't synced." She responded curtly, "Process is process. No manifest entry, no seat." I inhaled slowly, resting a hand on my lap. Every instinct told me to rise and shout, but I held still. I'd learned long ago, especially during that deployment to Iraq, that patience and timing mattered more. The underlying flaw was obvious, a delayed software update, not theft. But in the eyes of SunVista's protocol, a tire and a missing manifest entry equaled guilt. Harper Lee's camera hovered, capturing the scene. Tension in Bianca's clenched jaw, Ethan's smug grin, Lucas's hesitant glance in my direction. I allowed myself a small nod toward Lucas, as if saying, "We both know this isn't right." Deep down, I felt resolve building, a quiet certainty that once the manifest paper copy came around, the truth would speak for itself. I rested my palm on the seat's armrest, watching Bianca and Gwen's finger hover over the tablet's "Call Security" button. Her jaw tightened as she muttered, "This is your final warning." All around us, the cabin air felt thick with anticipation. Passengers leaning forward, sensing something bigger than a seating dispute. A soft click came from my jacket pocket. Matteo Cruz, sitting 2 rows back, had discreetly activated our private recording app. I didn't flinch. Instead, I tilted my head slightly and spoke under my breath into the earpiece. "Matteo, make sure every word is logged. We're rolling." Across the aisle, Harper Lee kept her camera fixed on Bianca. I caught Harper's eye, and in that brief moment, I recognized a silent partnership. She recorded truths, and I planned to expose them. Bianca's voice wavered as she tapped the tablet screen again. "Sir, I need you to leave now. The manifest still doesn't show you." I inhaled slowly, drawing on years of discipline. I had commanded brigades overseas. Trouble rarely surprised me. Now I gently straightened, turned my gaze through the row of seats, and spoke in a low but unwavering tone. "Bianca, I'm asking you one more time to verify it manually. Check the paper manifest, or better yet, ask for my identification." Her eyes flickered to Lucas Reed, who stood just behind her. He swallowed, glancing at his own handheld device. "Ma'am, the tablet's manifest still hasn't synced with dispatch, but the printed copy..." Bianca cut him off, her confidence cracking. "I don't need instructions." I suppressed a sigh. Overhead, the seatbelt sign flashed off and on. Finally, risking that one crack in her resolve, I exhaled and said, "I'm John Walker, former Army general. Right now, I own 40% of SunVista Airlines. I will not be treated like a criminal." The tablet in Bianca's hand trembled. Lucas's face drained of color. In the silent hush that followed, I felt something shift. The unspoken power I'd silently accumulated was finally unleashed. I settled back against the plush gray leather, swallowing hard as the cabin's buzz dulled. Memories flickered. 15 years ago, under a blazing Iraqi sun, I watched my battalion suffer because of a single misjudgment. A young private misread orders, and 3 lives were lost. I learned then that timing and precision mattered more than pride. Across the aisle, Matteo Cruz leaned in, his voice a near whisper. "Sir, the footage is live streaming to our secure server. Harper Lee's got her phone pointing right at Bianca." He angled his tablet toward mine, showing the error code flashing on Bianca's screen. "Manifest sync failed." I nodded once, low and deliberate. When she threatened to call security, I knew it was on her terms, but now it's on mine. My knuckles flexed against the armrest. The hum of the engines felt like a heartbeat counting down. I closed my eyes and allowed the quiet guilt from Singapore to surface. The humiliation of being shoved aside in that VIP lounge. My uniform a perfect irony against the judgmental eye of an attendant. Today, though dressed in a worn sport coat, I would turn humiliation into leverage. On my earpiece, Matteo asked, "Ready for Pentagon?" I exhaled and gave a slow nod that only he could see. I reached into my jacket, fingertips brushing the coarse fabric covering my phone. "It's time," I whispered, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Lifting the phone, I tapped the secure Pentagon contact. The cabin fell into a hushed expectancy, passengers sensing the pivot. The click of buttons echoed in my ear, and then I spoke, voice quiet but unyielding. "General Walker here. Suspend contract DFNG-227. Effective immediately." Matteo's face tightened in relief as I ended the call. A single breath passed through the cabin before a ripple of stunned looks spread. The next 6 minutes would prove that a quiet general could still command an entire airline's fate. At 8:06 a.m., I held my breath and tapped the final digit on my secure line. In seconds, the familiar voice of Robert Hayes, Director of Defense Contracts at the Pentagon, crackled through my earpiece. "General Walker," he said, "you have 30 seconds to confirm." "Robert, suspend contract DFNG-227. Effective immediately," I replied, my tone calm but unmistakable. That contract, $1.2 billion to supply jet fuel for 32 USAF refueling aircraft, had defined SunVista's military portfolio for 2 years. Now, in a single moment, it was on ice. "Understood," Hayes murmured, and a metallic click signaled the end of a military directive. I pocketed the phone and straightened in my seat. The cabin lights seemed to brighten, though it was the pressure that intensified. I let my gaze drift to Bianca Nguyen, whose eyes widened as her tablet screen switched from "Manifest Sync Failed" to a red banner. "Contract suspended per Pentagon order." A hush fell instantly. Passengers leaned forward, necks craning to see the tablet. Ethan Ward blinked, coffee in midair, as if to taste the words. "6 minutes ago," he muttered. "He was just a passenger." Bianca's composure crumbled. She stared at that glowing message, her lips parting and closing as if searching for words. Lucas Reed stepped in, voice low. "Ma'am, we just received notice. Must be an error." But the tagline flashed again, solid and unforgiving. SunVista Airlines, military contract 227, suspended. Amid the stunned silence, Harper Lee held up her phone, microphone extended. "Everyone heard, everybody saw. This isn't theory. This is real." Her camera panned across shocked faces, a mix of business executives, a retired teacher clutching her purse, and a young couple in the back, all frozen in disbelief. I let a small smile quirk at my lips. The ride from humiliation to power had been swift. First-class passengers, once so poised, now whispered urgently, "Is he serious? Can a single call do that?" Behind me, Matteo discreetly recorded Bianca's trembling hands as she tried to restart her tablet. The next ripple would come from SunVista's headquarters, emails flying, conference rooms erupting. But here in the cabin, the moment was crystal clear. A quiet general had wielded his authority without a shout. A single breath exhaled through the cabin, as if everyone collectively pivoted from shock to realization. The truth hung palpable. Not even a $1.2 billion contract could shield SunVista from judgment. And for me, John Walker, that was the culmination of a lifetime's conviction, proof that timing and resolve could alter the course of thousands in a heartbeat. Bianca's facade shattered in an instant. Her tablet's red banner blinked defiantly. "Contract suspended per Pentagon order." Yet she clung to protocol. "This can't be real," she stammered, voice quivering. "There must be a mistake." Lucas Reed hovered beside her, sweat glistening on his brow. "Ma'am, dispatch sent us the printed manifest. Walker's name is definitely there. He lifted a crisp paper copy, and passengers leaned in, reading their own eyes. Walker, John A., Seat 1A. Ethan Ward snapped his head around, knocking over his coffee. This is ludicrous! He's just flexing his old army muscle. He spat the words loud enough for the cabin to hear. A hush fell. Biographical fact met vicious disdain. Harper Lee raised her phone again, capturing Ethan's smug scowl. Playing politics mid-flight? Classy. Her tone held a sting that cut deeper than any slap. Bianca straightened, clutching her tablet like a shield. Sir, she said with forced authority, you can't threaten our operations. You're a passenger first. I leaned forward, voice low but unwavering. Threat? No. I'm exposing what was already broken, starting with this outdated rulebook. My gaze swept the cabin, and I saw understanding flicker in a dozen eyes. Hearing that, Lucas stepped in, voice trembling. We were told to flag anyone who didn't look the part. Baggy coat, jeans. Red flag. He looked between Bianca's tablet and my unwavering stare, guilt replacing his earlier hesitation. Bianca's hand hovered over the intercom. I'm calling security, she hissed. Do it, I replied, calm but resolute. I have every right to stay. The cabin erupted into a ripple of whispers. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, defensive. He's bluffing, he muttered. Jack Hayes, seated behind, rose to his feet. He's no bluff. He owns that contract. You crossed a line. Today, you'll answer for it. Bianca's shoulders slumped, her confidence evaporating under all those stares. In that charged moment, power had shifted. The quiet general stood tallest, while the rule enforcers realized their world was crumbling. I stood in the aisle, the soft hum of the A350's engines filling the silence. In my hand, my phone glowed with a livestream interface. I hit go live and raised the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced quietly, what you're seeing isn't just a seating dispute. It's a symptom of a broken system. Passengers watched, cameras and phones trained on me. Fair skies for all flashed across my screen as Harper Lee narrated. General Walker is live streaming this incident to the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through first class. Bianca Nguyen paled as her tablet pinged again. This time, a flood of emails and text alerts. Senate Committee has confirmed receipt. Hearing scheduled Wednesday. The realization hit her like a punch. Her training manual's unwritten rules were now under federal scrutiny. Lucas Reed's shoulders slumped. He murmured, I can't believe it. She's going to be called to testify. Across the aisle, Ethan Ward shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting from my face to Harper's camera. The cabin's tension became a visible thing, each passenger perched on the edge of revelation. I placed my phone back into my pocket and folded my hands. SunVista isn't just answering to a pipeline glitch, I said. They'll answer to Congress. Every passenger profiling policy will be on the table. My voice was calm, steady. 2 decades of command smoothed out any ripple of doubt. Jack Hayes leaned over from 2C. You're making history up here. He offered a small nod of solidarity. I returned it with a quiet grin. Bianca swallowed hard, her gaze hitched between Harper's unblinking lens and my resolute expression. In that moment, power shifted fully. The cabin was no longer just an aircraft cabin. It had become a stage where justice would be aired for the nation to see. By the time we crossed the Eastern time zone, the cabin buzz had gone silent. Harper Lee's live stream feed had already been picked up by several national news outlets. We'd landed at Washington Dulles, but the real landing was happening inside the gilded Senate hearing room. Cut 2. A packed chamber in the Dirksen Senate office building. Senators in crisp suits leaned forward, screens behind them playing the video Harper recorded mid-flight. The footage showed Bianca Nguyen's slap, the manifest glitch, and the red banner announcing, "Contract suspended per Pentagon order." One senator paused the clip and turned to the witness stand. I took a liter of water, placed it on the wooden desk, and adjusted the microphone. "Good afternoon, Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Perez, and distinguished members of the committee," I began, my voice calm, but carrying the weight of decades of military service. "Today's precedent-setting moment on Flight SV-115 exposed more than a seating dispute. It exposed a pattern of profiling that erodes trust, especially for veterans and civilians who simply can't afford to be judged by their attire." Senator Larson nodded, then asked, "General Walker, was this dispute, this apparent discrimination, an isolated incident, or do you believe it reflects systemic issues within SunVista and perhaps the broader airline industry?" I drew a breath. "Based on my experience and testimonials from other veterans, this is systemic. When a trained soldier returning home from deployment can be treated like a criminal because of a system error compounded by prejudicial staff training, that speaks to a culture problem. The video you've seen is merely the tipping point." Senator Perez piped up. "Your decision to live-stream the incident and submit it directly to this committee, was that an act of defiance or necessity?" "I viewed it as necessity," I replied. "Without transparency, these incidents are buried. I felt it imperative to ensure unfiltered evidence reached Congress. Our service members deserve dignity, whether on a battlefield or a commercial flight." A low murmur rippled as the committee chair cued the next video. Lucas Reed's testimony. There, on the screen, Lucas admitted under oath, "I was instructed, unofficially, to flag any passenger not fitting the first-class image. Baggy clothes, casual shoes, red flags we used to suspect fraud." His voice cracked. "I'm ashamed to admit it." Some senators exchanged glances, eyebrows raised. Next, Bianca appeared on the monitor, struggling to answer. She stammered, "We were following protocol." And Senator Larson interjected, "Protocol that treats certain passengers as lesser. That's what this committee is here to address." Cut back to me. I leaned forward. "Senators, I urge you to consider legislation mandating real-time logging of every passenger complaint and a federal oversight board evaluating airline staff training. No more silent rules. No more hidden bias." The room fell silent as the video feed ended. The gravity of that moment landed like a gavel. In the gallery, Harper Lee looked at me, eyes prouder than ever. Outside, cameras flashed. SunVista Airlines headquarters across town melted into immediate crisis mode, boardrooms filling with frantic calls. For the first-class passengers who'd witnessed Flight SV-115 firsthand, it was no longer just a headline. It had become a turning point. A soldier's dignity restored by courage, technology, and an unwavering demand for justice. In that packed hearing room, I realized we had ignited a movement. One that would reshape airline policy and, hopefully, protect every veteran who boarded a plane in the future. The cabin felt suspended in time as panic rippled through SunVista's headquarters. Back aboard Flight SV-115, I stepped forward, my chest steady beneath the soft overhead light. Bianca stood beside the galley, hands shaking as she clutched the tablet that now displayed Hearing Scheduled, Veteran and Passenger Dignity Act. She looked at me through wide, uncertain eyes. I tapped the intercom switch. "Attention, crew and passengers," I said firmly. "I have an announcement regarding today's events." Every eye in first class locked onto me. Executives in pressed suits, a couple clutching their purses, a retired teacher with a determined look. I let a moment of silence hang, then continued. Effective immediately, Bianca is terminated from all passenger-facing duties at SunVista Airlines. Her conduct today violated the most basic standards of respect and protocol. Bianca's face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but the hush was deafening. Lucas Reed stepped forward, shoulders slumped. I met his eyes directly. "Lucas, you enabled her behavior by failing to verify the manifest, despite having the paper copy. You will be reassigned to compliance review under direct supervision. Any further unwillingness to address bias will result in termination." Lucas nodded, voice barely audible. "I understand, sir." He backed away, his eyes cast downward. Passengers leaned forward, whispers rising. He's actually doing it. That's immediate accountability. Then I turned to Ethan Ward, who sat scowling in 1C. Mr. Ward, you are not an employee, but your remarks in the cabin were inflammatory and discriminatory. Under SunVista's flight discretion protocol, you are banned from all current and future flights operated by this airline and its affiliates. Ethan's jaw clenched. You called me a fraud, he spat. I held his gaze. You will stand by your words in the records. Now, sit down. He folded his arms defensively, but didn't move. I locked eyes with him. Or Shreveport security can escort you off this aircraft upon landing. Your choice. Ethan slumped back, silent. The cabin exhaled in relief. Even the flight attendants, who before had looked nervous, now exchanged nods. I allowed a brief, silent breath to wash over me, then faced the remaining crew. SunVista must learn. No amount of protocol can justify discrimination. Let this be the first step toward real change. Harper Lee, still filming, gave me a respectful nod from the aisle. Her lens captured the weight of the moment. A captainless, passenger-owned reckoning unfolding at 35,000 feet. Behind me, Matteo Cruz tapped his phone, recording everything. I turned once more to the cabin. This isn't about punishment, I said quietly, but restoration. If we can't respect one another in a 100-seat cabin, how can we ever claim to serve the nation's veterans? A gentle murmur of agreement rippled through first class. In that moment, the flight was no longer just a trip from Atlanta to Washington Dulles. It had become a live demonstration of integrity and justice. By the time the wheels touched ground, SunVista's policies would already be rewriting themselves. The Senate chamber buzz had barely settled when news filtered back to SunVista headquarters. Within hours, the Veteran and Passenger Dignity Act was fast-tracked through committee and voted onto the Senate floor. By late afternoon, a bipartisan majority had signed off. The bill's key provisions were clear. Every airline must log and publish passenger complaint data in real time, institute mandatory bias training for all cabin crew within 60 days, and impose fines up to $5 million for any proven case of discriminatory behavior. On Flight SV-115, I watched as Bianca and Nguyen's outdated protocols became the catalyst for reform. I addressed the remaining crew near the galley. SunVista must honor the letter of this law, I said. Within 48 hours, every hotel-style lounge, gate check-in, and in-flight interaction should reflect these new standards. No more silent policies buried in employee handbooks. Back on the ground, SunVista's CEO issued a public apology. In a taped statement, he acknowledged the slipshod training that allowed profiling based on attire or perceived status to persist. He committed to partnering with Defense Now Global to develop a bias-free passenger pledge that would roll out to every airport terminal by next week. Several major carriers, American, Delta, and JetBlue, jumped on board, each announcing their own pledges and publicizing new passenger dignity task forces. Meanwhile, on board SV-115, passengers stirred. A retired teacher from Iowa leaned forward and squeezed my arm. I flew here worried I might get caught up in whatever was happening, she said quietly, voice thick with emotion. Instead, I feel like I've been part of something bigger. A businessman 2 rows back nodded, adding, My company contracts with SunVista. I'm advising them to audit their entire customer service training next week. I offered a small, grateful smile. Part of me was relieved. Legislation would ensure lasting change. But another part was quietly hopeful. I pictured veterans returning home without fear of being dismissed over their clothes. The fight wasn't over, but the path was clear. Harper Lee's camera no longer hovered. She stood ready to tell the world how a single flight sparked nationwide reform. As we taxied toward the gate, I realized the ripple effect. SunVista's lounge in Atlanta would soon feature a veteran welcome center, with signage recognizing service members. Gate agents would learn to greet every passenger with dignity. I leaned back against my seat, exhaling. From that moment on, no one would be judged by a sport coat or a smudge of gray in their beard. Passengers like me, white, black, young, old, would be protected. I closed my eyes briefly, savoring the knowledge that, for once, change didn't come from a battlefield, but from a first-class cabin at 35,000 feet. And somewhere in Arlington, I knew my neighbors, fellow veterans, would breathe a little easier on their next flight. The moment had arrived. Justice had taken flight. The cabin door opened to the cool Washington Dulles air, and I stepped onto the jet bridge feeling lighter than I had all day. One by one, passengers followed, casting me approving nods. At the jet bridge's end, a new SunVista attendant in crisp, updated uniform, part of the bias-free training, offered a respectful salute. I returned her smile and continued down the corridor, where Harper Lee waited, phone in hand. She greeted me quietly. "General, any final thoughts?" I paused, taking in the hum of terminal announcements and travelers heading home. "Harper," I began, "I'm just a guy who wanted to keep his seat and ended up keeping dignity alive for a lot of people. If someone's been told they don't belong simply because of what they wear, this story is for them." Later that evening, I did a short live interview on W Top Radio's Night Voices. The host asked, "General Walker, was your goal revenge or reform?" I leaned back, choosing each word. Neither. Revenge fades. Reform lasts. Today, a lawyer's pen carries more weight than a soldier's sword. We've shown that respect isn't optional, whether you're a veteran or a grandmother flying to visit her grandchildren. In the days that followed, I walked my Arlington neighborhood and saw veteran neighbors nod knowingly as I passed. A retired colonel flashed me a weary smile, as if to say, "I know that feeling." A young service member paused to shake my hand. "Thank you, General. Now I can board without worrying about fitting a mold." Back in SunVista's Atlanta lounge, a new Veteran Welcome Center sign hung by the entrance, complete with a small salute statue. Every gate agent now carried cards reminding them, "Service first, uniform or jeans, you belong." As I settled into my Arlington living room that night, I reflected, justice sometimes happens in unexpected places. A first-class cabin, a Senate hearing, a friendly nod from a neighbor. If you've ever been told you didn't look the part, remember, dignity isn't about your clothes. It's about your right to be seen. Sometimes, it only takes one moment, one call, to change the entire altitude of your world. Tell me, have you ever faced unfair judgment because of how you looked? Drop your story or where you're watching from in the comments below.